A proposal, a basic sketch of a basic blueprint for what the legislature can do to give us a more equitable school finance formula in Kansas. I'm Steve Roberts. I'm privileged to serve on the State Board of Education, and it's not my job, it's not our job to fund the schools. It's the legislature's job, clearly delineated in Article 6 of our state constitution. Yeah, the legislature controls the purse strings. But serving on the State Board of Education, I know what the issues are in order to help our poorer kids get a better education, which is where the fixes are, and so I'm proffering these suggestions. But because yesterday was Thanksgiving 2016, and when I went to church, my priest read from the original Thanksgiving proclamation by Abraham Lincoln, I want to take a quick look at that. I believe this is the University of California, Santa Barbara. From the University of California, Santa Barbara, we have the Presidency Project and the original proclamation, which you can read at your leisure, but I want to highlight just a few things. No human counsel hath devised, nor hath any mortal hand worked out these great things. They are the gracious gifts of the Most High God, who, while dealing with us in anger for our sins, hath nevertheless remembered mercy. My church just finished the year of mercy. We need more mercy in government. It has seemed to me fit and proper that they should be solemnly, reverently, and gratefully acknowledged, as with one heart and one voice, by the whole American people. I do, therefore, invite my fellow citizens in every part of the United States, and also those who are at sea and those who are sojourning in foreign lands, to set apart and observe the last Thursday of November next as a day of thanksgiving and praise to our beneficent Father who dwelleth in the heavens. And I recommend to them that while offering up the ascriptions justly due to him for such singular deliverances and blessings, they do also, with humble penitence for our national perverseness and disobedience, commend to his tender care all those who have become widows, orphans, mourners, or sufferers in the lamentable civil strife in which we are unavoidably engaged, and fervently implore the interposition of the Almighty hand to heal the wounds of the nation and to restore it as soon as may be consistent with the divine purposes to the full enjoyment of peace, harmony, tranquility, and union. So now from AZ quotes, Betty White. What's not to like about Betty White? I don't know what her politics are, but I actually searched for ox being gored. That's what I just searched for, ox being gored. And that's an important point to make. Somebody's ox is going to get gored. No matter what we do for a school finance formula, someone's ox will be gored. I think most of us are familiar with that. So the reason to show you this report from the Kansas Legislative Research Department from May of 2014 is to simply show you their chart of the history of the base state aid per pupil. So going back to the beginning of the finance formula that's been in place for about a quarter century, it's been around $4,000, give or take $400. So it's been at $4,000 plus or minus 10% for a quarter century, from 3,600 to 4,400, a lot of numbers in between. This is a sad story. And the state has been sued almost annually for that quarter century because this is not a great way to do it. It's not enough. And being from Johnson County, Kansas, I think I have a unique perspective on this as a champion for poor kids. Because the system doesn't work for poor kids. Works pretty well for the kids in my neighborhood, but it's not working for poor kids, and it needs to be changed. So the first suggestion is to stop calling the base state aid base state aid. We've got too much history here if we continue to call it base state aid people are going to fuss over what percent it went up or what percent it went down, and they're going to look back over our shoulder. What a sad history this is. Let's lose this sad history and move on. It's time that we do. As I say, this is just a rough sketch of a blueprint of some basic principles to adhere to as the legislature devises a new school finance formula for the state of Kansas. Call these buckets of money, pots of money, baskets. Call them cauldrons. I don't care. This is just a simple graphic to explain that about 75% of the total budget needs to be equitably distributed. And that would be my suggestion for what to call this biggest piece of the pie, the equitable distribution. Do not call it base state aid any longer. Call it the equitable distribution. You take 75%, give or take. It might be 70%, it might be 79%, but somewhere, and again, the legislature has to hash this out, somewhere around 3/4 of our budget needs to be equitably distributed. Every kid gets an equal slice. And if we do it this way, that slice will no longer be about $4,000. It should be between $6,500 and $7,000 per year per student. Oh, well, we can't do that because someone's ox will get gored. We can't worry about that. We have to make this thing more equitable. We have to. So, take 75% of the total budget, the $4 billion that we spend on education in Kansas, and divide it equally among the 500,000 students, the 500,000 give or take that we have in the state, and it should be between $6,500 and $7,000 per year per student. Do not call it base state aid, call it the equitable distribution. The ed budget. That's easy enough. The next part of the pie is what I call the fuss budget. The legislators will not want to call it this. I'm not suggesting that that be the name of it. It's just what I call it as a working model. It's the fuss budget. It's the part that has to be fussed over. How much of this piece, the 20 to 25% of the budget that gets parceled out, goes for transportation costs in western Kansas because the per student costs are higher? How much of this goes for at-risk programs in Wichita and Kansas City, Kansas, and other places? Lawrence, Topeka, Leavenworth. How much of this goes for special projects? How much of this goes to the School of the Blind and the School of the Deaf? And one of the things we need to remember is that some students are more expensive to educate. A blind student costs more to educate, period. And instead of treating all students the same unless we slap a special designation on them, we have to put the needs of individual students ahead of the system. Easier said than done, but that's the general direction we're going. Kansas leads the world in the success of each student. Kansas leads the world in the success of each student. Now, what's this last piece? It's the local piece. We've been calling it the local option budget. I do not have strong personal feelings on whether or not we should continue to call it the LOB. If we do, fine. If not, fine. But here's the essence of it. Whatever we raise locally, as we like to do here in Johnson County, we can only keep some percentage of it, and some slice has to go back into the fuss budget. So if the legislature says whatever you raise locally, Johnson County or anywhere else, you only get to keep 85%. You have to kick 15% back into the fuss budget. Now, I don't know that that's the right number. Maybe we get to keep 93%, we have to kick back 7%. Or maybe we only get to keep 72%, we got to kick back 28%. Personally, I think that's too high of a kickback. I don't think you could make that fly. This is where the legislators earn their pay. They're whopping $88 a day. Now, there are other considerations that they get in terms of retirement and capers and all that, and that just complicates things beyond redemption. These things have to be considered. It will not be as easy as I'm making it out to be. The purpose of this little video is to suggest that if we adhere to simple, declarative, principled rulemaking, that we have a shot, a really good shot, at making school finance equitable for all Kansan families and helping the state board, on which I'm privileged to serve, realize its vision that Kansas leads the world in the success of each student. And one more thing about Thanksgiving. Yesterday, at my religious service, we sang a song at the end of Mass. America the Beautiful. Oh, beautiful for heroes proved in liberating strife, who more than self their country loved, and mercy more than life. America, America, may God thy gold refine, till all success be nobleness, and every gain